Tom Cameron Swayze.
Ed Huntley. David Bacon. John Chen.
Tonight, terrorist bombings at 3 hotels in Amman, Jordan. Dozens are killed, scores wounded. Is this the work of Al-Qaeda? Playing defense, America's oil company executives on Capitol Hill defending record prices and profits. Are Americans being gouged? Test run, yesterday's election results. Should Republicans worry? And our new NBC News poll, the president, the war, and the CIA scandal. And his honor. How does a guy who lives with his parents and is barely old enough to vote suddenly become the mayor?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. The first reports reached the United States during the mid-afternoon. A bombing at a hotel in Amman, Jordan. Then it was 2 hotels, then 3. A Radisson, a Grand Hyatt, and a Days Inn, all of them in a cosmopolitan city in a nation that plays a tricky and unique role in the Middle East, where this kind of thing, a large and systematic suicide bombing, has never happened before. Dozens are dead tonight after the 3 explosions. Here is the casualty count at this hour, and that may change with the light of day. We have 2 reports here tonight, beginning with NBC's Keith Miller.
There was no warning. The near-simultaneous blast hit 3 hotels in the center of Amman shortly before 9 tonight. The first explosion, NBC News, London.
This is Andrea Mitchell in Washington, where intelligence officials say tonight's attacks have all the homes targeted by Al-Qaeda and its neighbors in a new wave of terror. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Now to Washington and a new reality that has sparked a lot of anger across this country. The high cost of energy heating your home and that huge gasoline price spike we've just been through. Today it was question time for the men who run this nation's biggest oil companies. Questions about their prices and this year's record profits so far. NBC's Chip Reed is on Capitol Hill.
Mr. Mahmoud.
Huge.
It's unlike
NBC News, the Capitol.
Now to Election Day 2005, which, by the way, confirms some Republican fears that President Bush's falling approval ratings may be a drag on the party. But even as Democrats celebrate big wins in the 2 governors' races, others say you can't read a national trend into last night's results. Here is NBC News Chief White House correspondent David Gregory.
So very much. It's a great win.
It was a big night for Democrats who portrayed gubernatorial wins as a black eye for President Bush.
Tonight, I want to thank the people of New Jersey for rejecting the Bush Rove tactics that we see in politics.
In Virginia's stronghold, the president put his own prestige on the line in a losing effort for Republican Jerry Kilgore.
This showed that the president's policies in red states.
In a word, no. Okay. Not this time, yes.
Off-year elections are often overanalyzed. Still, this one proved that just when the president thought things couldn't get worse, they did. David Gregory, NBC News, the White House.
And we are unveiling some new poll numbers here tonight. For that, we're joined by Tim Russert, our Washington bureau chief, moderator of Meet the Press, with the results of our latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. And Tim, how does it look for the president?
Well, Brian, not good news. Favorable, unfavorable in terms of job approval. Just 38% approve of his overall performance, 57% disapprove. That is the highest disapproval we have gotten in the 5 years of the Bush presidency.
Tim, what one issue are people pointing to as most important?
Iraq, Brian. And look at this. There are 3 examples of why President Bush is not polling well. 57% believe he deliberately misled the country in making the case for war. In terms of Iraq troop levels, 57% said we should reduce the number. And are we confident the war will end successfully? No, 58% are now less confident. Iraq is a cloud that hovers over this presidency.
And Tim, what about this recent White House scandal that people have been reading and hearing about?
They are taking it dead seriously. Brian, look at this number. 79% believe it is a serious matter. Only 17% say not serious. And look at this question, Brian. Is the president honest and straightforward? A year ago, 50% said yes, 36% say no. Now, 33%. 1 in 3 Americans only are saying the president is honest and straightforward.
And how much of this, if any of the damage, has rubbed off on Vice President Dick Cheney?
Quite a bit. Nearly 7 in 10 Americans believe Vice President is personally responsible for the CIA leak. And in terms of his favorable, unfavorable, look at these numbers. 27 give him a positive rating, 49% negative. A very negative for the Vice President.
So, Tim, troubling numbers for the Republicans, obviously, but does that necessarily mean that the Democrats can start celebrating?
No, Brian, because the Democrats also have a net negative rating. And listen to this, 45% of Americans say the Democrats lack a clear message and a vision. They have lots of work to do, too.
Thanks, Tim. As always, Tim Russert from our NBC News Washington Bureau. We learned today that a huge figure in that CIA leak case is leaving her job. Judith Miller is leaving the New York Times after 28 years, and after spending 85 days in jail recently, she said to protect a source. Miller has been controversial both for her reporting before the Iraq War and since her release from jail. She's been publicly criticized by some of her colleagues. In a letter that will appear in tomorrow's editions of the newspaper, Miller says she is leaving because she has become the news, something she says a New York Times reporter never wants to be. Up next, as we continue from New York this Wednesday night, NBC News in depth. In Florida's hurricane zone, why are all these people standing in line for so long? And later, meet the new boss, the distinguished gentleman from Michigan, the new mayor. By the way, he's 18 years old.
Joe's been demanding.
NBC News in depth tonight, hurricane-related news on several fronts, including word this evening that former FEMA chief Michael Brown is no longer on that agency's payroll. You'll recall Brown resigned back on September 12th under fierce criticism because of his handling of Hurricane Katrina, but he was allowed to continue collecting his $148,000 a year salary to help the agency complete its review of the response to Katrina. Meanwhile, in South Florida today, as you're about to see, Hurricane Wilma has made the struggle of daily life even worse for a lot of people there. The story tonight from NBC's Mark Potter.
A single person is given $152. A family of NBC News, Miami.
Up next here tonight, our special series on the boomers, the baby boom generation, and why some believe that golden oldies are a good way to stay young. It is a huge business.
On day 3, high in the sky over Innsbruck, Austria. How's Matt going to top that? Watch tomorrow on the Today Show on NBC.
Kids, NBC Nightly News tomorrow.
There may be a new trial for Andrea Yates. The highest criminal court in Texas today upheld a lower court ruling that threw out the murder convictions of Andrea Yates, that depressed mother who drowned her 5 children in a bathtub back in 2001. The lower court ruling in January threw out the convictions because an expert witness for the prosecution lied when he said Yates had gotten the idea for the killings from an episode of the TV show Law and Order. Residents of a mobile home park in Evansville, Indiana, that was destroyed by a tornado last weekend were allowed back into their neighborhood today. Most of them, sadly, discovered there wasn't much left. They do have until Saturday to gather up what they can. Then cleanup crews have to come in. 22 people died in that twister, and that was the deadliest in Indiana in 30 years. Now to our special series here, The Boomer Files. It's being done in conjunction with Newsweek magazine. Rarely has music been as intertwined with American culture and politics as it has been and still is for the baby boomer generation in this country. And as the boomers start to hit 60, as they say, the beat goes on. Here is NBC's James Hattori.
It isn't just
old. On Wall Street today, early gains were cut by that bad news of the terror attacks in Jordan. The Dow did finish the day up 6.5 points. NASDAQ was up nearly 4 points. The room was filled with notables at the White House today, all assembled for the awarding of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But it was one particular recipient who brought the House down just by coming into the room because it had been reported Muhammad Ali was too sick to attend. And then he appeared. Among the other honorees, Alan Greenspan, Aretha Franklin, Carol Burnett, Andy Griffith, Paul Harvey, Jack Nicklaus, and General Richard Myers. When we come back here tonight, a young man who is still in high school, he also happens to be the mayor. The people of Hillsdale, Michigan, population about 8,200, woke up to their new mayor this morning. While the vote count is still unofficial, he is settling into office, looking forward to his new administration and the senior prom. The new mayor is in high school. His story tonight from NBC's Carl Quintanilla.
A politician would say, even before he's sworn in, he's learning fast. Carl Quintanilla, NBC News, Hillsdale, Michigan.
That is Nightly News for this Wednesday night. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We'll look for you right back here tomorrow evening. Good night.
NBC Nightly News Netcast. Watch NBC Nightly News whenever you want, online, free, and in its entirety, only at msnbc.com.
A bizarre. Good morning. Breaking news.